News Talk 820 WBAP and now on FM at 93.3. Friday night, Chris Crock Show. Make it a preset at 93.3. 800-288-WBAP is our number. 800-288-9227. Talking about the chances of Trump's winning the election. And then I want to pivot now because I want to go to illegal immigration and tons of FEMA money being robbed for Joe and Kamala's illegals. First of all, on the ground, Trinidad Agua is reportedly part of a long amount of suspects arrested for a very brutal gang beating and robbing of a woman inside her Northwest Dallas home. Fox 4 saying 3 more men were arrested after an hours-long standoff with Dallas and Irving police near DFW Airport. That's Trinidad Agua. Most likely they're Venezuelan gangbangers. And so the police report indicates they most likely are Trinidad Agua. The 2 men were, one man was arrested. He told Dallas police the other men were at a part of the anti-El Tren criminal street gang, anti-El Anti-Tren. I don't know what that means. There's no evidence this time that they were a member of Trinidad Agua gang, but they could be. We don't know. But they're Venezuelan illegals from Kamala and Joe. We do know that. They all entered illegally. They're being held at Dallas County Jail on an immigrant hold. But Fox 4 reporting there's 3 new ones they got from the other suspects that they caught and arrested for a brutal attack on a woman who attacked her in a garage, tied her up, robbed her, and they literally used Google Translate to talk to her because they can't even speak it English. And they literally, they believe they looked her up on a map and targeted her and were asking for specific high-value things that she may not have, even though she had a lot of money. It took like a Gucci purse, $75,000 in jewelry, a Ferragamo handbag, a Judith Lieber handbag, the woman's phone, and several coins from a wooden box. Every fingerprint led back to one of these guys. They attacked her in her garage, tied her up, and robbed her. So I don't know, it looks like 5 or 6 people that brutally beat her, tied her up, and robbed her. And that's one thing. That's North Dallas. So, and Trinidad Agua is here, whether that's them or not. They are here, confirmed by Dallas police. They're all over Texas. Meantime, we find out that FEMA prioritized illegal migrants. Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas saying FEMA doesn't have enough funds to last through hurricane season because of the hefty costs of Hurricane Helene, but also they gave out $1 billion to Joe and Kamala's illegals. They dished out $104 million to cover the cost of services to illegal immigrants in New York City, according to the Politico. And also, Kamala has led at least 1.7 million potential national security threats across the border. That's from the House Judiciary Committee yesterday. So, and the Biden and Kamala have been using FEMA funds to house illegal migrants all over the country. His entire presidency is called the Shelter and Services Program. All right. Trump, by the way, saying he will take TPS, temporary protected status, from those Haitian migrants in Springfield that have taken over. He will end their temporary protective status and get their butts deported where they belong. They do not belong here. They should not be legal migrants. Kamala and Joe, as J.D. Vance so adroitly stated, Kamala waved her magic wand. We started CBP One app under Trump not to bring in hundreds of thousands of illegals to fly them over and call them legal. We started it to make them wait in Mexico, and then we would grant them through that app so that they wouldn't even get over here. They turned it into a massive stamp and release illegal migrant thing and making them legal under false pretenses. So that's where we're at. My questions for you is, do you support FEMA using up to $1 billion for helping Kamala and Joe's illegals instead of hurricanes and other major national disasters? This is a Kamala and Joe made disaster. And do you think Kamala and Joe are putting our lives at risk by this invasion when you see stuff like Trinidad Agua being in North Dallas and this woman being tied up and beaten and robbed in wealthy area of North Dallas. 800-288-WBAP is our number, 800-288-9227. Brent in Dallas, WBAP.
Hey, Chris, how you doing? I love your show.
Thank you.
Yeah, Trump touched on this today, and they called him a liar. But Trump was saying that the reason you're short on money is you're putting all this in the illegal housing. But that's a fact, because Mayorkas said today that they were short on FEMA money. And I wish the media would get into this and be journalists to prove that they're spending FEMA money on these illegal immigrants. And that's why these people in North Carolina need the money more than the illegals, Chris. I love you. And I'll tell you what, I'll ask myself till I die, why are we still using lab rats when there's so many Democrats in the world?
Wow. I don't agree with that, but I will tell you this. Why do people keep electing Democrats? Right now, there's a good chance, I believe, we're going to win the White House. And the press is so dedicated to making sure that Trump doesn't win that they're going to ruin it for her. They're going to get him to win because they're so over the top ridiculous trying to make him look bad and make her look good. And everybody sees the truth. Well, most everybody. We keep hearing, like right now, that volunteers allege FEMA is hampering rescue efforts all over. The federal government is stopping people from rescuing and serving people, while the government is not doing a darn thing. All that money going to illegals. And here's more. This is such a disaster. All those Cubans, Venezuelans, and Haitians that they brought in, and Nicaraguans, there's 530,000 of them, 500,000 of them, who all of a sudden find out today, yeah, we allowed you to overstay on a some kind of a visitor visa, sponsorship program or some kind. And now it's expired because you only got the deal for 2 years, and guess what? We're not going to renew it. So we have 530,000 illegals that were brought in by Joe and Kamala allowed, and now they're saying, you know what? The 2-year period is over. We're not going to renew that. You're screwed. How much do you want to bet it's because a lot of those Venezuelans and a lot of those Cubans will not vote for Democrats? But also, it just goes to show this whole thing is a disaster. These people they do not care about us. They're just doing a wholesale invasion. They've imported a slave class and to depress our wages, to make the super rich, wealthy people that own and run these big corporations happy, to keep voting to Democrats and keep making them rich while we get poorer and poorer and our wages are depressed and depressed. And then look at this, how much they're not making us safe. By the way, asking you, do you support FEMA using up to $1 billion to help Kamala and Joe's illegals, as has happened, including $114 million just for the month of June to house illegals in New York City alone? And do you think Kamala and Joe are putting our lives at risk by this invasion? I sure do. 800-288-WBAP is our number, 800-288-9227. Lines wide open. Chime in right now. This from Fox News as well. Immigrant, what they mean is illegal immigrant murder convictions, tens of thousands higher than ICE's bombshell figures the other day. We were told that we have 13,000 illegals that have homicide convictions roaming our streets. An additional 2,000 to 3,000 that are pending homicide convictions roaming our streets. And there's tens of thousands of more for burglary and rape. But now we're being told even more. It's likely tens of thousands more than the 13,000 convicted murderers are roaming the streets. So very well could be 20 or 30 or 40,000 murderers convicted walking our streets that are illegals. Again, I'll say 20 to 40,000, according to these numbers by Fox News, tens of thousands higher than the 13,000 convicted murderers that are illegals roaming our streets. So if it's tens of thousands, that means it's probably, 10 to 20,000? 10 to 30,000 more? So you're probably looking at 23 to 33 or 43,000 illegals that are convicted of murder roaming our streets. ICE data shows that among those on the non-detained docket that's roaming the streets, 62,000 convicted of assault, 14,000 burglary, 56,000 drug convictions, 13,000 homicides, 2,500 kidnapping, 15,000 sexual assault convictions. My gosh. But it's now tens of thousands more of the murderers, given the criminal records of the border hoppers and their native countries not baked into the data. A new data expert tells Fox News Digital. And I'm going to repeat my friend, retired former DPS captain and head of border operations and counterterrorism and counterintelligence for the border, Jason Jones, who's now a Newsmax border correspondent. He also was asked by Governor Abbott to help craft, and he did, the designating Trinidad Agua a level one gang. That means the state police now have a top priority to go after them. They also are synergizing now with every local county and city department to track down, find, and take down Trinidad Agua as a statewide synergized effort. It's a big deal, and it means they're going to nail a lot more of them now, which is exactly what should be done. And he also said what we're seeing with these murders and rapes and burglaries, terrorism and destruction and gangland activity is nothing yet. This is just the beginning of what we're going to be seeing. They're here. He guesses about 20 or 30,000 or more Trinidad Agua members are here. And they were not here before Joe and Kamala let them in 2-3 years ago. They were not here. They never existed here. One of the most worst and most violent and most terrorizing gangs in the Western Hemisphere was brought in by Joe and Kamala. You have not seen the beginning of the end of this. It's just the beginning, unfortunately. Okay, coming up next on the Chris Crock Show on News Talk 820 WBAP and now on FM at 93.3. Helene dumps rain on millions of United States homes that lack flood insurance. Are you okay with their tax dollars funding the rebuilding of homes that were wiped out due to Hurricane Helene? Again, they could have had a health insurance. They could have had flood insurance, but they didn't get it. Are you okay paying for their homes? Are you okay with breaking the rules to pay for their homes? We'll talk about that. And then Kamala and Joe, Energy Department, committing $360 million to a power line connecting Texas grid to Mississippi's. Should we do that and expose ourselves to connecting to the national grid? There's a big warning in that. We'll talk about that, too, coming up next on the Chris Crock Show on News Talk 820 WBAP and now on FM at 93.3. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Make it a preset, y'all. 800-288-WBAP is our number. 800-288-9227. As I watch the disaster unfold in North Carolina, particularly, I know that Georgia has 90 counties, 90, that Governor Brian Kemp has declared a disaster, but Biden didn't. He literally had to call the White House. He says, hey, you've only done 11, dude. We need 90. Oh, and then they did it after he called it. He had to call them. You see that? Have you ever heard of a governor in the middle of one of the worst disasters the state has ever faced having to call the White House for help? Not a little thing, not a regular checkup after, and you always hear the White House calling them, and he had to do that, call them. He was very frustrated when he talked about that. He was doing a news interview, and he talked about that. I think I have it. Let's see if I have it in my archives. I do not. Might have it in my other Twitter files. Let me see if I have it here. No, I don't think I have it. But he called him out. He was frustrated. And had a press conference. And also today was the first time Governor Kemp appeared with Donald J. Trump in person at an event, at a function. Yeah, I do have it here. This is it right here. I'm going to retweet it right now so you can see it yourself. Governor Kemp. He is a wildly successful governor of Georgia. And he has an incredible ground game in the state of Georgia. And he has now given it all to Trump for the first time. That's how Trump's going to win Georgia. I swear to you, that's why he's going to win this time.
When the first emergency declarations came down, there was only 11 counties in that. A lot of people were outraged, including me, because there was such devastation in up to 90 counties. So we called the White House. We spoke to the president's chief of staff, the FEMA administrator, and said, "Look, you're sending the signal that you're not paying attention to some of these rural communities."
So people were outraged. There you go. So he had to call that out, and I'm glad he did. Here's my question, though. I mean, you're going to hear from a host. We talked to him a little earlier, and we're going to talk to him again a little later at 11 o'clock. You're going to hear from him. And it's horrifying in North Carolina. It's worse than we're hearing. It's worse than we're hearing with how many homes are lost and how many people are dead. 220 confirmed dead at Rose this morning from 211 to 220 or 213 to 220. And then I think there's hundreds more missing still. And I want to ask you this, though. Like, so many homes have been destroyed. Would you be willing to, are you okay with your tax dollars funding the rebuilding of homes that were wiped out due to Hurricane Helene, even though they didn't have flood insurance? I am. Here's what I am okay. Like, without a blink of an eye on a disaster like this. I had flood insurance 1 year in my home, and it's expensive. Not too much, because I don't live in a flood zone. I realize you can look at your deed or whatever, or something like that, and it shows if you're in a floodplain, and if you're in a 100-year floodplain. I'm in one that has 100-year, meaning there has been no flood in 100 years, which means you really don't need flood insurance. Unless you disagree, I'm listening. Maybe you've had a bad experience, and you're like, no, Chris, get it. But I don't. I'm in one of the suburbs, and there's no issue with flooding anywhere near me, and there hasn't been in 100 years. So we've had some of the worst ones the past 5 years, right? I've been here for 10. No flooding issues. Are you willing to pay for somebody's home, for people's houses in this disaster with your tax dollars? Would you have a problem with that? If they've been wiped out due to the hurricane and flooding from the hurricane. 800-288-WBAP. And do you have flood insurance on your house? Do you think most of us should? 800-288-WBAP. You might be able to teach us something. Like I said, I did it 1 year, and then I realized, wait a minute, you spend like $200 and something bucks. It's probably more now with Bidenomics and Kamalanomics. But it doesn't make sense for me to spend, probably $350 a year now, and there's almost no risk to my home being flooded. So that's kind of my thing on that. What do you think? I'm okay with funding them, honestly. If it was hit by the hurricane and it flooded the house, just wiped it away. I don't know if that would qualify for most policies anyways, because some of them are like a flood is not, but maybe your house getting wiped out from a natural disaster is. And I know it depends on your policies. But if it's not covered in their policy, if they have insurance and it's reasonable, I don't have a problem helping them, because I would want the same thing in some disaster that had no fault of my own and was not anything that was foreseen and is a once-in-a-100-year disaster. This is the second deadliest hurricane in 50 years. 220 dead, as I said, of right now, and it could go up another 50, 100, 200 more, 300 more. We don't know. Pray for them. So I'm okay with doing that. 800-288-WBAP is our number, 800-288-9227. Up next, should we connect to the Mississippi grid, which would connect us to the national grid? I have a big problem with that. I'll tell you why we shouldn't, in my opinion, and what their proposal is, and what I learned from the Wall Street Journal today about why our grid is okay, but nothing. Actually, our grid's pretty crappy compared to Florida's, and why theirs is good. Next on the Chris Crock Show on News Talk 820 WBAP, and now on FM at 93.3 at 10:33 on News Talk 820 WBAP, and now on FM. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Make it a preset, y'all. 800-288-WBAP is our number, 800-288-9227. Well, my goodness, I can't believe it's 10:30 already. All right, this is quite the interesting discussion. Energy Department, federal government, that is, Joe Biden administration, commits $360 million to a power line connecting Texas grid to Mississippi. It would help tie the state's isolated power grid to outside sources of electricity. You know what? Our grid has big problems, but we're free. We do not have to go bow down to federal regulations on connecting with that grid. They do not have the power to try to crush our grid and turn it green. There was a lengthy editorial today in the Wall Street Journal about why Florida's energy prices are so lower. One of the main reasons why, and I cannot deliver every little factoid like it did, but I can tell you this, one of the main reasons why is they rely on natural gas. They have a very large natural gas. Actually, the biggest reason why is they are not beholden to the federal government's green energy incentivization, bastardization of their grid. Our governor, Governor Abbott, and before him, Governor Rick Perry, and before him, Governor Bush, allowed for our government to come in and subsidize green energy projects to the point where it made energy companies, I swear to you, everything I've learned, and I'm not an expert, but everything I've learned is that energy companies just want to make money off of energy. They don't, care what kind it is, whether it's natural gas, nuclear, or green stuff. But the problem is the federal government gives so much money that they make more money doing green. And it's only because they're literally shoving so much money in our pockets. That's our tax dollars. You know what it's doing? It's bastardizing our grid. Why? Because the reason why the journal said wind works so well in the upper Midwest, like Minnesota, is because they have a lot of wind up there. And they have a lot of rural land that is not being used. And so that stuff works there. I don't like it, but it works there for that reason better. Solar also works better in some states. Oh, they said that Washington State is like one of these leftist states. But here's the thing: Washington State has tremendous amounts of hydropower. That's why they are so quote unquote green. But you have states where they use solar and wind like ours so much because of the federal government making much of the new energy green by incentivizing it and bastardizing it. We are beholden. Literally like almost a third of our grid's energy comes from green stuff now, which means when the sun's not out and the wind's not blowing, we're screwed. Can you believe that? Can you believe that our Republican governors have done that to us? So do you want to attach ourselves to the national grid? It does not say in here, and this is the Dallas Morning News, so maybe they don't know or maybe they're not going to put it in here. But if we attach to Mississippi, and it says, and the national larger grid, if that means we are beholden to their restrictions, that has destroyed, according to the journal, two of the biggest, largest, they're called RTOs, regional transmission, something or other, outlets, where they transmit to like 5 states. Those ones are being destroyed in the Northeast and Midwest because of green mandates from the federal government. And we are going to have, as a country, a 30%, we're on target to have a 30% energy deficit in this nation because all the green mandates and the Kamala Biden mandates, according to the journal today in a long editorial, are literally they're literally shutting down coal and natural gas plants year after year after year and putting green crap in that is unreliable and can never do what gas did and what coal does and what nuclear does. Let me tell you, I have put up on my Twitter feed like 50 times since the storm that knocked our power off. And it shows the Wall Street Journal's graph, and it shows the day before, the day of, and the day after, maybe like 2 days, 3 days in a row, of the disaster where we almost lost our grid. Remember that? In February, like 4 years ago, whatever it was? Okay. Now, what it shows is when that crisis happened and we were this close to our grid collapsing and being out for 6 months, 8 months, and or longer, like having no power for up to 6, 8 months, possibly, in reality. Was because On that day, wind and solar, which is a third of our grid, which is so wrong, it should be none of our base load. Base load is what we do to just regular survival. You know what I'm saying? And because a third of our base load is now drawn upon by green energy, it went dead. It went dead. It went from supplying, 10, 20, 30% on the grid to nothing, to like 5%. And it's because the sun wasn't making sun. It wasn't beaming, and the wind wasn't blowing. They froze. They froze up because we're not going to insulate. It's not reasonable to insulate a wind thing that's going to get frozen once every 10 years. I mean, it's stupidity. What was good was winterizing our natural gas and coal because and nuclear and the pipes on them, because those it could possibly go below freezing for an extended time, again, more likely than some 10-year deep frost in the RGV. But here's the point. The point is we would be beholden to two of, I think they're RTOs, regional transmission, something or other, RTAs, and those are hubs for regions, and they're beholden to the federal government regulations that are destroying the grid and shutting all the good stuff down. And when you look at that Wall Street Journal grid, it shows that natural gas shot up 5 to 10 times what it normally does, because you can turn it up to 11. You can crank up the output on natural gas. And you can't do that with wind, and you cannot do that with solar. It is a disaster. It is a garbage. It is crap, and it is leftist green stuff that destroys this freaking nation. I do not want us attached into that Mississippi grid. I don't want the national grid being beholden to us. I don't mind with joining with a very conservative state like a Florida or like which I know it's hard because they're on the other side of the coast, if you will, but a Louisiana, a conservative state, although the governor can be Democrat and dirty Democrat sometimes. Oklahoma, somewhere that's Alabama. I know we have to go over a state, so throw a line over. Yeah. I just I don't want to attach to a state that is attached to the national. I don't want that ever. They will grab us by the cojones, and we will lose our freedom. I'm telling you. And we may have lost it already. We may have lost it already because of the fact that our current and past two Republican governors have sold us out. Here's my question. I'd love to hear from you on this. Do you want us connected to the national grid? Especially if it means we have to be turned green like in California, Illinois, and New York, and Pennsylvania. Do you know that the Journal said that Pennsylvania pays 30% higher energy prices than the average people do? Because they're beholden to that. Pennsylvania. And they are one of the biggest producers of fracking and natural gas. And they are screwed because of the liberal Democrat regulations in that region. Do you want to be connected to the national grid and possibly be beholden to the rules and regulations that would come with that from the federal government? Especially if it means that we got to be turned green like in California, Illinois, and New York. 800-288-WBAP is our number. 800-288-9227. Lines wide open. Chime in right now. 800-288-WBAP. 800-288-9227. Would love to hear from you. Chime in right now. Yeah, I literally am very much rabidly against that. So much so. And it's profound to see this destruction. And the Wall Street Journal was the one who taught me the most on our grid being such a disaster. And it's because our base load, 33% of it is derived from solar and wind. And that's because our Republican governors, 3 in a row, have allowed the federal government, taken subsidies and allowed them to bastardize and to have the energy companies say, I was going to do natural gas, but I'm going to do wind and solar because I'm going to make twice as much profit because the federal government's going to give me all these free payouts. So I'm going to make money, and I'm making more doing that than I would of natural gas. I don't care which one I make. So our government, as you know, with our $18 billion surplus, has taken, I think, $5 billion, and it's in a program to incentivize and give low-interest loans or incentivizations to energy companies to build natural gas plants here, and I think that's great. But I fear it's not going to be a big enough incentive. I want to make sure that we give them a fat freaking incentive. I would like us to double the federal subsidy and try to kill the federal subsidies in the state and try to put a tax of some kind, or a fee that makes it ridiculously hard to build green energy anymore, and make it ridiculously incentivized to make the obvious choice. Dude, we're going to make a killing if we do a natural gas plant. We need a bunch of them. China is putting a new coal-fired plant online every day. There is no climate change crap. They're belching carbon dioxide at 2 to 5 times the amount we do on any given day, and they will do 5 to 10 times more in the future months and years ahead. And they don't give a frog's fat. You know what? They have developing nation status. This whole thing's a hoax, and we're destroying our grid while China's hacking into our grid to take it down. Understand? That Bolt Typhoon thing they're in our energy infrastructure, in our water, in all this stuff. It's disgusting how much they've infiltrated our country, our local governments, our state governments in New York City, in New York State, in senators' offices in California, in congressmen's offices in California, in the governor's office, one of his top assistants in the state of New York. They are in every single thing. And with Tiananmen Tim Walz, he's compromised, I believe, from the Chinese. And our grids, we just sell them off to the Chinese to take it over. Okay, we're going to talk to Julian Saginaw next in just 2 minutes on the Chris Crock Show and News Talk 820 WBAP, and now on FM at 93.3. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Make it a preset, y'all. 800-288-WBAP is our number, 800-288-9227. Let's go. We're talking about the grid, and the Energy Department says we're going to commit $360 million power line to connect Texas to Mississippi and the national grid. Do you want that? Absolutely not. To me, that looks like it's going to open the door to nationalized regulations by the Biden and God forbid the Kamala Energy Department. They will literally destroy our grid like they've done to many regional grids in the Midwest and Northeast and the West. No. Julia, our number, by the way, 800-288-WBAP is our number, 800-288-9227. Julia in Saginaw, you are on News Talk 820 WBAP and now on FM at 93.3. Hello.
Hey, it's Julie, but...
I'm so sorry. Julie, that's my fault.
Fine.
It says Julie. I said Julia. I apologize.
No, you're fine. I'm with you, but I don't think that I want to be doing anything with the national anything that we may be, running into any type of federal stuff. I mean, our governors may not have gotten things right here recently, but I'm going to bet on Texas, 99% of the time rather than the federal government.
Absolutely.
The resources we have here.
Absolutely. So. Well, I appreciate your call. And do you want to totally stop and kill the green energy subsidies that have enticed energy companies to build more wind and solar and less fossil fuels like natural gas?
Yeah, we've got too many of those laying around and going to get just thrown into fields and places already. We don't need more.
Absolutely. Could not agree. Thank you, Julie. Appreciate it.
God bless.
You too. All right. 800-288-WBAP is our number, 800-288-9227. There's some just horrible things that we're seeing with Sean Diddy Combs that I haven't been able to get to until tonight. It's been so insane, and some very scary things that are being bandied about, and it is no good. No good. So let me share the latest on that and tell you about that. He's accused of abusing a 9-year-old boy. 120 victims. This new lawyer, Tony Busby out of Houston, announced he's representing 120 victims who say that he has legitimate cases against, they say they have legitimate cases against Diddy Combs. You have a 9-year-old boy who's accused of spiking drinks and with horse tranquilizer as all these victims come forward. The youngest victims were 9, 14, 15 when they were victimized. The abuse happened between 1991 and as recently as this year. This individual, who's 9, taken to audition in New York City with Bad Boy Records. He was sexually abused by Sean Combs and several other people at the studio on the promise to both his parents and to him getting himself a record deal. Other boys were there to audition. All of them were trying to land a record deal. All of them were minors. Like Justin Bieber was there, and like Usher was there. Usher's performing right next door at the AAC. I could throw a stone at where they're at from here. And I jokingly said, there's nothing funny about abuse, but I jokingly said, I wonder if he's going to talk about stay away from Sean Combs. He's a child molester. He victimized me because I unfortunately think he and Bieber were absolutely one of the victims based on everything we've talked about. We've played audio. You can look at the audio and video on my Twitter feed from last week. It's horrifying what we see from him and Bieber. Another minor said that Combs said he would make him a star, but he needed to visit him in private, away from his parents. Once they were there, he made the victim allegedly perform oral sex on him. There's that one video on my Twitter feed you can see that looks like Bieber's doing that on a dance floor. And then the camera's on him, and he looks up, and he has somebody's mobile phone, and he turns around on the ground and looks up and stands up. It's just unreal what I think he was doing right there. An individual at 15 flew to New York to attend a party, was drugged, and taken to a private room, allegedly in the presence of Combs, where his female individual minor was raped. Other individuals took turns raping her. Accusers may have been weeded out with non-credible stories. At least 120 potential new victims are filing individual cases. One that keeps popping up for one of the drugs is xylazine, or tranq, which is based on our research is known as horse tranquilizer. Okay, the victims are scattered throughout the country. Here are 13 revelations from the lawyer filing suits. 25 of the 120 were minors at the time. The youngest is 9. Combs made a minor perform oral sex on him, allegedly. I told you about the 15-year-old being taken turns. Pregnant woman allegedly drugged and raped. Not a minor. Group dinner, Miami, wasn't drinking because she's pregnant. Whatever she drank was laced with something. She blacked out, woke up in the same bed with Combs in his mansion in Miami. Both of her front and back areas were torn and sore on the downstairs front and back. Horrifying. I believe all this. Most filed police reports and hospital reports at the time of the incidents. Some at the private homes of other celebrities. More names will be implicated. Some will shock you, quote unquote. Alleged happenings at the homes of celebrities, banks, pharmaceutical companies, hotels, all will be implicated. Spans from 1991 to 2024. It's evenly divided between males and females. When you are full of evil and power, you will defile anything and everything. And look in the Bible, it happens all the time. When you have that kind of money and power, sick, wicked things happen. And I believe that happened here. And I believe this one is going to end up being possibly just as bad or worse than Epstein. I don't doubt it. I really don't. You're also looking at a lot of massive A-list celebrities. A lot. As well. So that is what we have on that. On News Talk 820 WBAP and now on FM at 93.3. By the way, coming up next, we're going to speak to a great talk host out of Charlotte, WBT Charlotte, Pete Kellner, about water, energy, the crisis, and the destruction and the deaths and the FEMA disaster response, horrible response, and how FEMA is fighting and stymieing efforts to save and rescue people, and how we can help the folks there. All that's coming up next at 11:03 on News Talk 820 WBAP and now on FM at 93.3. Hey, Ryan Bingham's The Great Western comes to Dickies Arena October 12th. Special guest Shane Smith and the Saints, Tanya Tucker, and more. Get tickets now at Ticketmaster.com. Listen to the morning show all week long for your chance to win a pair of tickets.